Okay, so episode 20 of From the Shed End podcast. Episode 20, wow, we've done 20 episodes already. Myself, T-Dot and Theo, as always. So how you doing, Theo?
I'm good, thanks. Pretty dramatic and eventful night for Chelsea in a good way, though. So with the
Yeah,
draw that just happened a couple hours ago, but yeah, I'm good, thanks.
yeah. It's been an event for a couple of days, to be honest. I feel like we haven't recorded since before the Arsenal game. So there's a lot to talk about tonight. So first and foremost, obviously, if we have our Twitter handle at the bottom and Instagram as well. So if you're listening on Apple Music or Spotify and you're not watching live, you can follow us on Twitter at From the Shed End, and also on Instagram at From the Shed End with an underscore between each of the words on Instagram as well. Like and subscribe on YouTube as well. Same name, From the Shed End. Just give us a search and you should be able to find us on there. But let's start from last weekend. An eventful time at the Emirates Stadium. Lukaku's return. Give us your thoughts, Theo. What do you think?
It was brilliant. I don't think I've watched such a dominant number nine striker's game for Chelsea since probably the Diego Costa era potentially. It was exactly what we wanted from our number nine. He was dominant. He bullied defenders. He had Pablo Mari, lying on the floor a few times, and it was the perfect player to play against that Arsenal back line. They were so narrow, the back four, particularly Tierney, who's probably their best player. He kept so close to the centre backs, which allowed our fullbacks, Alonso and Reece James, who I thought as well were the stars of the show. They gave them acres of space on either side. And then it just allowed, players like Havertz, Mount, Lukaku to just trickle through those centre backs. And that's how we scored that first goal. And in fact, the second one in a way. So, and Lukaku was brilliant. Honestly, he couldn't have had a better debut. Could have maybe had a few more, if anything. Yeah. I think he had eight attempts on target on goal, I think. And in total, we had about 22. So it goes to show that, we were maybe a bit unfortunate just to score two. I just want to touch on that Bird Leno save as well. It was probably one of the best saves this season so far. Absolutely superb. But no, it's just Lukaku. It kind of reminded me of almost prime Drogba, just the way how he could collect the ball with his back to goal and then, turn or either just, slide through defenders. Like had you kind of, covered up his face or, replaced him with a dummy like a mannequin or something and asked me, who do you think this player is? I would have probably said Didier Drogba, honestly. Because I just remember a Drogba goal at Wembley against Spurs where he kind of collected the ball with his chest, with his back to goal. Then he turns and scores. And that's what Lukaku was doing most of the time there. He was collecting the ball, with his back to goal. And it was brilliant. And then I think Havertz had a good chance at the end. And again, we kept a clean sheet, which is really important. I think the only time they really threatened was that Saka maybe deflected shot from Alonso, which Mendy parried out. But really good game. We know that our record at the Emirates in the last couple of years hasn't been the best potentially. I was a bit apprehensive in the previous episode. I thought maybe Arsenal might nick a goal. They might be a bit, wanting to come back after the Brentford game. But no, 2-0 clean sheet. We couldn't ask for more really. So I'm really happy. And obviously 5 goals, 2 clean sheets in total, 6 points from 6. So really good start to the season. First time we've kept back-to-back clean sheets in our opening games since 2010-11 season when we won 6-0 to West Brom and 6-0 to Wigan. So it's a good omen, I feel.
Yeah, and I think it was, spot on. I thought we going into the game, when you look at the two teams that were lined up and there were absentees for Arsenal. But I remember Gary Neville, or I think it was Jamie Carragher at the Brentford game for Arsenal, and he said that Brentford bullied Arsenal and it carried on. They carried on into our game. We dominated Arsenal from every department on that pitch. And, you mentioned around Tierney being drawn in. He was almost a centre-back for majority of the game, which allowed Reece James all the space to do what he wanted. And a part of that, I feel, was down to Lukaku, because the fact that they had to come in, they didn't want Lukaku having the ball at his feet. He was the one that they were just trying to close down, which then allowed that space for Reece James as well. But just watching Lukaku, he's not, I've said it before on here, I've given him a lot of stick previous, obviously, when he wasn't at Chelsea, when he was at Man United. He's improved and he's an all-round number 9 now. And I think, which I expected, as you get with anything, as you do more of something, you become better at it anyway. So, but the fact that he can receive the ball at his feet now, he's setting play. He set Havertz up, which he should have probably potentially scored from. But his link up play is brilliant. He can play off the back of, like you mentioned, off the back of a defender as well, and just the sheer strength. I mean, Pablo Mari just. He just couldn't cope. You could have put two centre backs on Lukaku. He probably still would have scored his goal, because he was just the speed of him, for a guy who carries that sort of strength and upper body strength. The speed on him is electrifying. And I think, some teams they're going to struggle. They're going to have nightmares playing against him this season, because he looks unstoppable. But I was impressed overall. I was impressed with the team overall. Obviously the changes that Tuchel made, it worked, and I was impressed for 90 minutes of that game. There was just nothing that I could see Arsenal were going to be able to do in that game, regardless if they didn't have Patrick Aubameyang or Lacazette, Ben White. I still think we would have been able to comfortably win that game. And I was impressed. I was impressed with the way we played from start to end. It was just a perfect game. You couldn't ask for anything more, really.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you mentioned. And the way you kind of said Lukaku draws in the defenders, it's almost like he's a magnet. He kind of gets the ball and about 3 defenders come on him, and then he just manages to get past, or he manages to play another player. And also for his goal, people might say it's a tap-in, but at the same time, the way you said he got past Mari, and also last season, those were kind of positions, where we put the ball and it would just go right through the penalty box and no one would tap it in, whether it was Abraham, Werner, Giroud, Batshuayi at times. We wouldn't have that striker who'd get into that position to tap it in. So I think it's exactly what we need this season, just that number 9 that can create chances, that can make runs, but that can also be in the right spot at the right time to, score goals, which we'll need this season for sure. And I think that's probably the thing, that Lukaku is able to do that with maybe a couple of days of training with that team and have that chemistry around those players is extremely impressive, because it almost feels like, given watching him play that game, he'd been playing with them for at least a season or 2. So and that's probably only going to get better with the more games he plays for Chelsea this season.
Yeah. So I was impressed, brilliant win for us. And I'm hoping, which we'll talk about later, I'm hoping he can take that sort of form into a very important game against Liverpool on Saturday, which, we'll talk about that later. It's going to be a big one. But let's move over and talk about some of the transfer news that's currently happening with Chelsea at the moment. Just before we came on air, it looks like Bakayoko is going to agree an extension 2023, but also go on loan to AC Milan. So it looks like it's a done deal now. But the big talking point all week, really, and seemed to really hit a nosedive yesterday, was Kurt Zouma to West Ham for 25 million. There was reports yesterday that the deal had broken down for whatever reason, but it now seems that the deal is back on, and that now opens the door for Kounde to potentially move to Chelsea. So we'll start with Zouma. What's your thoughts on potentially losing Zouma?
I think it's a real shame. He's been a great servant for us across the years. He went out on loan twice to Stoke and Everton, came back and kind of defied the loan system for us, and proved that he's able to start games under Lampard in that first season. And, I think he was really, really impressive in that Super Cup final. I think he started it and played really well. And pre-season, he looked very solid. And West Ham getting him for 25 million, I think is an absolute steal in this market, I feel. A player of his quality going from one Premier League club to another. I think if his name was, something English, he'd be going for at least 60 or 70. So it's kind of ridiculous. But at the same time, I think he's 26, 27, or maybe a bit younger. I'm not too sure. And Jules Kounde is 22. So maybe Tuchel's really planning for the future. And I have spoken to a lot of my French friends who, follow the French national team and all the French players that kind of get called up to the team. And they have told me that Kounde is a lot better than Zouma, and he's kind of, going to be the starter, maybe alongside Varane at the next World Cup and next winter. So I think we are getting a player potentially for the next decade. Whereas with Zouma, we were probably getting a squad player for that can fill in the gaps for the odd league game, and we could kind of see it with Tuchel at the end of last season. He was really kind of, I think he had his back three in Christensen, Silva, and Rudiger, and occasionally as Peliqueta would deputise as one of those three centre backs. So I think it's a real shame to lose Zouma. He came in under Mourinho in 2014, I think it was. And And he looked like, we were getting a player that we'd have, potentially to replace John Terry long term. He looked and he was very good in his debut. I think he made a debut against Bolton in the League Cup. And he scored in his debut. So it's a shame to be losing him. But then maybe as well, Chalobah's form and Chalobah's kind of emergence into the team has maybe even pushed him out of the door even more. So I'm sad to see him go. It's a shame. But if we are planning for the future, and I do really trust Tuchel and his transfer, kind of who he wants in the squad. So that tells me something else, that it is the right move potentially. And I also think West Ham are getting an absolute steal with 25 million.
Yeah, and I mentioned I was speaking offline to someone, and I said, echoed a lot of what you said, but I think as well, part of me thinks, Zouma wasn't, because he was meant to be part of the Kounde deal initially. He was meant to go to Spain, and part of me thinks he wants to stay in London. He's obviously settled here. He potentially doesn't want to move, which is probably why the Tottenham sort of thing was floating around before the West Ham, but he also probably wants to play first team football, and he's probably potentially not going to get that at Chelsea as well. I think I agree with you. It's a massive steal. Originally I think it was 30 million. So, for 25 million, West Ham are getting a brilliant player. And to be honest, I think he brings a lot of experience to that West Ham squad. He's played at the highest parts of European football in terms of, he's played in World Cups and everything. So, he's a player that I think will add a lot of value to a West Ham team that's going into Europe as well. In a season where they haven't really had European football for so long. So he's going to bring a lot of talent and wealth and experience to West Ham. I agree with you. I think Kounde is definitely the better option, not just because of age-wise, but I think technical ability as well. I think, Kounde could probably do the job that Zouma does, if not better as well. And we've definitely got the depth there in that position. Centre back is not a position that we're really struggling for. So I think you're right. Zouma probably wants first team football. There's a World Cup coming up in 18 months or just under. He wants to try and force himself into that World Cup squad just as much as Kounde, and Varane potentially will be the starting centre back. So I think for him it works. He probably wants to do that move. But it is sad to see, because I think he hasn't really ever recovered from that injury that he sustained. He really did well to get back and play at the level that he has, because not many players would honestly, play consistently the way he has since he's come back from that injury. And I think the loan to Stoke and to Everton helped that a lot. I think, they were brilliant loans for him, because it allowed him to play without the pressure, I suppose, of being at a club like Chelsea. But if it's a move that works for him, I'm sad to see him go. But we've got rid of a lot of centre backs, and I wasn't surprised to see another one go before the window shut. And it's just unfortunate that it's Zouma and it's not a loan deal. It's a permanent. So ideally, I'd love it to have been a loan, but then he comes back and he's in the same boat again. So could it have been Rudiger? Rudiger was out the picture for a while whilst Frank Lampard was there. So he's obviously done really well to get back into the fold under Tuchel.
Yeah, it's a real shame. It is. I think, as you mentioned, I think he does want to stay in London. He's got his wife and kids, I think, in London probably. He's settled here. And also one thing that Zouma brought to the team was, I think he was a big presence in the dressing room. You watch all the Chelsea Unseen videos on YouTube, and you can see how much he gets along with the other Chelsea players, whether it's Rudiger, Ziyech, Mendy, whichever player. And I think, West Ham are definitely getting a steal. The one thing I am a bit cautious about with Kounde is his height for a centre-back. He is 1.78 m, which is my height, and I don't particularly think I'm tall, so I'm a bit. But then if we're playing in a back three, you look at Aspi in that back three, he's not necessarily tall. I think I Googled it today, he's 1.78 m as well. Yeah. So maybe, Premier League in a back three, you can get away with being 1.78 m, but in a back two, I'd much rather have a Silva and a Rudiger, or Rudiger and an Aspi than a Kounde. But yeah, I'll be honest, I haven't watched a lot of Sevilla. I think the games we played against Sevilla, particularly that second leg, where we beat them 4-0 in Spain, I don't think he played a pass, if I remember correctly. He might have been injured, but we are getting a very exciting talent, similarly to when we brought Zouma into the team. Maybe Zouma was a bit younger at the time, but I said we're getting a player for the next decade, which is what's really important.
Yeah. And another player that we've been linked with as well is Saul Niguez from Atletico Madrid. Brilliant player. Do we need him? Is the question I'm going to ask you.
I mentioned on a few previous episodes that if we do kind of, have I don't want to call it a panic buy, but one last kind of, dip into the transfer market for a player, it would be a centre mid. We've got Jorginho, Kovacic, and Kante. Should one or two of those players get injured, we mentioned the congested, fixture list with the Club World Cup in December. We may need a fourth midfielder, but at the same time, I wouldn't mind seeing, a Loftus-Cheek or a Mount play in that position from time to time if it means keeping the other three happy, and also, still showing that we have a lot of faith in Billy Gilmour potentially returning from his loan from Norwich at the end of the season. But I think it's talk of a loan with an option to buy, which is quite surprising because I think a year ago, Saul Niguez was one of the best La Liga players, the best player of at Atletico Madrid, whereas now he's almost being pushed out the door. I think there was some kind of spat with Simeone or something like that.
Yeah.
But it could work a bit like Kovacic. We took him on loan, then we bought him permanently, and then he was our player of the season. Last year it was, I think. No, two seasons ago. Sorry.
Year before.
Yeah, under Lampard. So it could work like that. And again, I trust Tuchel, the players he wants to play, the squad he wants to build. So I think it could be a very, very, almost an underrated transfer, especially if it's a loan. And then, if he impresses and we want to buy him and Atletico Madrid don't want him anymore, then we could maybe get him for a cut price or something. So I think it could be a good move, but at the same time, if we miss out on it, I'm not going to be particularly, upset. So yeah, it's kind of a win. Win-win either way, I suppose.
Yeah, and Strip Bear mentions there about Chalobah being able to play central defensive midfield as well, which is a really good shout because
he played there at Lorient in Ligue 1. He was CDM there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good shout. I do feel, and I think it's a mandatory fee. I don't think it's an option to buy. I think it's a mandatory. Okay. So, which makes me very nervous because if he doesn't perform to the expectations that we're expecting from him, it's a mandatory fee. So I'm hoping Marina can do a magic and get that to an option to buy, because I agree it's a loan. I think the loan deal makes sense. One of the factors that I suppose we haven't really mentioned is the fact that potentially we could suffer a massive COVID outbreak in the team. And if that does happen, or we lose a Jorginho or a Kante or both, who do you put in there? So I kind of understand the rationale behind that, and maybe over complementing an area of the team because of COVID. We've seen it with Arsenal at the weekend. They lost, I think, 3 players in Ben White, Aubameyang, Lacazette. I think the week before, that we played them, they'd lost 3 of their main players. So I do understand it from that sort of point of view. But as we've mentioned, we've got Chalobah. We shouldn't really have sent Billy Gilmour if that's the case as well. Conor Gallagher as well is another player.
We haven't mentioned him yet, but also Tino Anjorin potentially, who's a centre midfielder. I think there's talks of him going to Lokomotiv Moscow in Russia, but he's another player who can play CM. He played a few games for us last season and did a very good job. So whether it's he's kind of plays the odd role this season or gets sent out on loan, he's another player that could play a part.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I'm sure before the window shuts on the 31st, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of activity, especially for Chelsea. We've still got, we mention it every week we do an episode, we've still got Danny Drinkwater on the books, I think. Ross Barkley's still on the books. I think Baba Rahman, I'm not sure if has he gone anywhere? I don't think
I think he's still on the books.
Yeah,
I'd probably give him another year and a loan as well.
Yeah, so we've got to look at potentially offloading. But in terms of Saul, if we get him, will I be annoyed? Potentially, yes. But I understand the rationale. I think in a COVID season where it's still, potentially could be that you lose a lot of your players just because of the illness, you do need to probably, over compensate that kind of position. But it's going to be a make or break for him. I think he's obviously ruffled feathers at Atletico. I don't think he can really come to Chelsea and do that. It doesn't work. We've seen it with players before. we've heard stories around some of the players who have been loaned out for numerous seasons for that reason. So I don't think he can come here and do that, but we'll have to see. Strip Bear says just want the third Champions League. I'm with you as well, 100%. Which actually is a very good segue into our next topic, which after today we'll talk about the draw. But before we talk about the draw, let's talk about the awards, because I think that's probably almost a clean sweep, if we're honest, wasn't it?
Yeah, just missing the Rudiger or Aspi as the centre back, but fair play to Ruben Dias. He was probably in the group stages, and then the semis against. I'm seeing you pull a face right now.
Yeah, I think we were robbed. I really do. I think we conceded the least goals in the Champions League.
Yeah, I think it was it 3 goals against
I don't think we
Rennes and Real Madrid. I think just 3 goals. I just remember watching Dias against PSG and being amazed. But at the same time, if you bring up that stat, it is quite. Maybe I just didn't want to give it to all of them to Chelsea, so they just have to make an exception somewhere. But I do agree that Rudiger, Aspi, it could have easily been them as well. Yeah. And Striper just says Christensen, is unlucky as well. He had an amazing Champions League final when he came on for Silva.
Yeah.
But overall, the Mendy as well was absolutely superb in that Champions League campaign. To think he was, at the job centre in 2014 or 2016, I can't remember. Yeah, but he's come a long way. Yeah, he's come a very long way, and he was absolutely superb for us. And then, we were talking about Saul Niguez just before. 2 of the 3 midfielders were Chelsea players that were nominated for the award. So it's almost like, can you even displace any of these players in that midfielder role? And Jorginho winning the overall achievement for the men's player of the season for his Euro tournament with Italy, but also his Champions League tournament with Chelsea is remarkable. And to think maybe last summer or the summer before, people wanted him out the door, which is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
He's taken a lot of stick as well. When you think about and I mean from a Chelsea fan base as well, not obviously everyone, but a lot of the fan base at some point, had an issue with him. He overcame that. He still came out on top, and he was one of the best players for us last season. He really was, and I think that shows a lot of character in him as well.
Yeah, Premier League top goal scorer for us as well.
Yeah, I wasn't going to mention that. But credit to him for being, top goal scorer as well. But I think overall his game's definitely changed. He's had to obviously adapt to the Premier League over the last couple of seasons as well. But it was just amazing. I didn't really. I don't know if I expected him to win the overall player of the year. I wasn't sure if he was actually going to get that, but I'm glad he obviously did.
Yeah, I was a bit. It's almost indicating now. Can he win the Ballon d'Or? If he can win the UEFA Men's Player of the Year, what says that he can't win the Ballon d'Or? And I don't know when the award is. Maybe in a couple of months. Yeah. But he's had a superb season, and I think it's about time that players that don't necessarily get the goals or the assists, or the Ronaldos or Messi's basically, get the credit. I think it's about time that happens. I'm always for defenders, goalkeepers, holding midfielders to get these type of awards, because it's a team effort at the end of the day. And without the Jorginhos, the Kantes, the Mendys, you don't really get that Champions League trophy, that we had in May. So really, really well deserved. And Tuchel as well, comes in January, does a 6-month job and gets the award. It's absolutely fantastic how he's turned our season around. So credit to him as well.
And it just shows you the quality that Tuchel has been able to sort of pass over to the squad. Again, I know I've mentioned it on here before, but I just remember before that Wolves game and that sort of training video that was put out, I think the day after he'd signed for us or he joined the club, there was a training video that was on the fifth stand, and it was just, you could tell something was going to happen last season just off the back of that. And then obviously the game, the Wolves game, although we didn't win, we drew, but it was just a different change in the way that we played. So credit to Thomas Tuchel, because I don't think any manager's potentially ever done that before, turned a season around the way that he did. And all the players that, the N'Golo Kante, Jorginho, Mendy, for their awards as well, fully deserved. I do think we should have got the defender, but I'll take 3 out of the 4. Won't be greedy. But But yeah, no. Let's move over to the actual group itself, Group H. We managed to avoid some sort of challenging tests. I think we've got a very nice group. Juventus, Zenit St. Petersburg, and Malmo, Zlatan's old stomping ground. Yeah, what's your thoughts? Tell me your thoughts.
Group H for holders, which is a good sign as well. But yeah, it could have been worse. It could have been a lot worse. It could have been PSG. It could have been Ajax. It could have been AC Milan in pot 4. But at the same time, I'm looking at those 3 teams. The one that stands out, obviously, being Juventus. But it's not. This is not the Juventus that we played in 2012. That had the Andrea Pirlo, that had Gianluigi Buffon, that probably had Bonucci and Chiellini in their prime. Alexandro, all these amazing players. I think this is a very weakened Juventus team at the moment, in a transition period. They've just got Allegri back, maybe, so they could rediscover some form. There's talk of Ronaldo leaving, coming to the Premier League, which would be good for us because we don't have to play him in the Champions League, but bad for the other 19 teams in the Premier League as well. So that's kind of a possibility that he won't face Chelsea in the Champions League, which would be good for us. They just signed Locatelli, a very good player who was impressive at the Euros. But at the same time, I'm looking at our squad, and I still think we should beat them home and away, I think. But then Zenit trips to Russia are never easy in the Champions League. Right. Yeah. I know when we Shakhtar or Ukraine or all these Russian teams, I'm thinking I know we beat them 4-0 last season in Krasnodar when we traveled to Russia. But I just remember that first half being very, very tricky and quite sloppy. And then obviously you have to come back on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night and have another game of Premier League on a Saturday or Sunday. Good thing now is I think I read that if you have a Wednesday Champions League fixture, they won't give you the 12:45 kickoff on a 12:30 kickoff on a Saturday, which is good news for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think again we should be beating Zenit. Quite funny how it was Ivanovic doing the draw and he drew Chelsea and Zenit, his 2 old teams. Yeah. And then Malmo last team, again, pot 4 team. I think we played them in the Europa League in 2019. Beat them home and away, I think 2-1 and 3-0 it was. Again, I think they're the team that we should be getting the 6 points guaranteed from them. But no, I think it's, as I said, it could have been a lot worse. And at the same time, it could have been a lot easier. So I'll take this group happily.
Yeah, and I think I looked at the group, and I did kind of think, Juventus, and then like you've just mentioned, it isn't the Juventus that we're aware of. And if they lose Ronaldo, I think they've still got Juan Cuadrado actually as well. I'm sure they've still got Juan Cuadrado,
right wing back, I think. Yeah.
Gosh, I have flashbacks when he was at Stamford Bridge, but
half a season.
It was. The less said, the better. But it's a good group. I think I agree with you. I think I look at the group. Juventus obviously a tricky. At the 3, they're the trickiest. I think. You mentioned obviously going to Russia. It's always going to be difficult. If there's fans in the stadium, it's going to be double difficult because just the volume of noise that they can generate over there, the intimidation of that kind of atmosphere. That you find in those kind of European nights over there. So I think it's going to be comfortable, or it should be comfortable for us. But I do think, we get out of that group. We've just got to progress. And last season, I've mentioned on many podcasts over the summer, no one had us down to win the Champions League last season. And I like that. I like the fact that we are technically, again, probably going to be the underdogs. I know we've won it last season, but you look at PSG, for instance, they must be front runners to win that now. So yeah, I'm happy with the group. I think it's a good group as well. So we'll have to see how we get on, but as long as we get out of the group, I'll be happy. I'll be very surprised if we don't.
Yeah, we're visiting the stadium of the final in the groups as well, because it's in Zenit St. Petersburg. So be quite almost like a 2012 style omen, But yeah, I think
you do like.
I do like my omens. Yeah,
yeah.
Just like how we played. It's probably not a good omen, but we played Juventus the following season after winning in 2012, and we didn't make it past the group stage. So I think I won't mention that. But we should be making this group. I'll be very surprised if we don't top it. And even if we, as we found out last season, if you top it or you come second, sometimes you're better off coming second nowadays. So yeah, either way, I'm happy, and I think we should be comfortable our way out of this group for sure.
Yeah, if we did progress and let's say we super fast forward to the final, Man City are there, PSG are waiting in the wings. I'm kind of stealing the question that I've just kind of put up, but I'm remixing the question a bit. So, out of Man City or PSG, if you had to face one in the final, Messi,
This is like
Neymar, Mbappe. Potentially, if he stays, he doesn't go to Real Madrid. But if he's there, or City, without Harry Kane, potentially Ronaldo. Who would you rather face in the final?
This is the same question we got last year when we had the semi-final between PSG and City. I'm going to say City again. We know what Guardiola's like in these big games. He overcomplicates things. He'll play probably Jack Grealish as a false nine or something ridiculous like that. And I think PSG on their day, and if they get all their players performing like they should, Pochettino manages to do that, because I know they're all very big egos. And even I think if Mbappe leaves, they'll probably replace him with someone like Richarlison, who probably even excel even more than he has at Everton. Then they can be a very, very scary team to face. And I think we're going to see that in their group, which where they're playing City, and I'm not sure who the other teams are. Was it Leipzig? I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember, but I think they've got a relatively cushy group as well.
No, it's quite hard to look past. I know maybe we're still kind of thinking on the back end of last season, but Chelsea, City, PSG for me are the three teams that really stand out again this year. Bayern and Liverpool, you don't really know their form. Same with United, I suppose. But it's hard to look past Chelsea, City, and PSG once again.
Yeah, Messi can't score against Chelsea. He doesn't really score against many English. I think he's scored against Liverpool once, maybe twice.
I think, he scored against Liverpool. He did score against us twice at the Nou Camp, put it between Courtois' legs in the first minutes, I think. But he might have scored against Arsenal a few times.
Yeah, we don't.
They don't really matter. They don't count. Yeah,
yeah, we don't care about Arsenal. No. But yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it as well. Even more so, we are champions of Europe, so we do need to put on a really good performance every single game up until the final, which we're going to reach as well. So it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it as well. And as I said, congratulations, obviously, to all the players that got their awards, because they definitely deserve that. All of them, obviously it's a Chelsea podcast, but Haaland receiving his award as well. I thought I'd love to have seen him at Chelsea, but I don't know if you read about the wage demand and the agent fee recently. So it made sense. I think once we had any sort of discussions with them, if we did, that would have been off the table straight away. I don't think we would have ever really entertained it at all.
Yeah, and I think now that we've got Lukaku playing and scoring, it's almost quickly forgotten as well.
Yeah. We shall see. But moving over to Saturday, 5:30, my heart's already in my stomach. This is the game that I generally do feel physically sick before kick-off, mainly because I live in Liverpool and it's the worst thing ever if Liverpool beat Chelsea. So let's start with how do you reckon we're going to get on at Anfield?
It's really, really hard to say, because we've both won our opening two games. I think we've been more tested than Liverpool in the opponents we've played in Palace and Arsenal, whereas Liverpool probably couldn't have asked for an easier easier opening two games. Norwich away and Burnley at home, 3-0 and 2-0, 5 goals like us. But I think this is not the same Liverpool that had that kind of, spirit in the squad when they won the Premier League in 2020. I do think, Salah, Firmino, Mane aren't the same brilliant trio that they were 2 or 3 years ago, maybe. And at the same time, we're a better team than we were last season and the season before and the season maybe even before that. So I think defensively, we've looked so comfortable. We've never really looked like we're going to concede a goal. We're playing better opponents on Saturday in Liverpool. They've got a better defense than they had last season with Van Dijk back fit now. Even their left back, who's right back, sorry, who's replaced left back, I think. Who's replaced Robertson, Simicas. He's looked decent since he's come in, and even Harvey Elliott, who played against Burnley, looked very decent as well. So Klopp's a very good manager. I think it was, last season was harsh on him with the injuries he had and the situation. And Anfield is that stadium that does need its fans. I know that there is talk that they just sing at the beginning and then they stay quiet for the whole game. But it's still quite an intimidating ground to go to. I know that. And as you said, it's one of those fixtures that makes you feel a bit sick before kickoff because we know how the Liverpool fans are more for you around the city, but even on Twitter, they're very noisy and they like bringing up old facts or whatever. But I'm kind of weirdly confident. I want to say I'd take a draw, but at the same time, given how we've played, there's nothing that say we can't take the 3 points. There's nothing that can't say that Lukaku won't score again. I think Havertz and Werner as well have goals in them this season. So I'm confident. I'm confident as well. More confident than I was for any Liverpool fixture in the last maybe 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think I look at Liverpool and, I watch both their opening fixtures and I just don't think they're a squad that is at full fitness. You look at Van Dijk, that is going to take 6-7 weeks for him, a couple of weeks more to get to his full potential. I feel like they potentially rushed him back to be ready for the season because I think before the season or during the Euros there was talk that he wasn't going to make the first month of the Premier League. So I feel like they've rushed him back. He still looks. I mean, he's a world class defender, so he still looks brilliant. But I just think against the Lukaku, who is raring to go, he's like a tiger in a cage waiting to be unleashed. Is he going to be able to contain him as well? I don't think so. I think tactically, watching Tuchel, the way his tactics are, I think he'll outsmart Klopp. I really do. I think on the day, I think Tuchel knows how to preempt what Klopp is probably potentially thinking already. Same way we did in the Champions League final. I think he'll do that. I look at Liverpool and I see a lot of weakness. This is going to come back to haunt me, I know, when we do the next episode. So I'm going to just get it out there now. But I think they are weak, and when I say weak, I don't mean in a strength way. I mean in a squad depth. I think they've just lost Shaqiri for 12 million. They're still scouring around to try and find players to replace him. And I think Fabinho may not be in contention. He may still be on compassionate leave. He might be back. I'm not sure. But Harvey Elliott had a good game at the weekend. But is he going to be able to do that against Chelsea? I don't think so. I also think using Trent as another weakness, we'll be able to capitalise similar to how we did against Arsenal. Trent likes to get forwards. He likes to be that sort of midfield right wing back. He doesn't really like to defend. There's that talk that he can't defend as well. So I think Alonso will play, Reece James will play, and I think they will have a field day running down the wing, and Lukaku will be waiting for every ball that comes into that box. And I think it'll be Joel Matip. I don't think Gomez will be starting. So I think it'd be Matip and Van Dijk at the back. Van Dijk, yes, he may be able to contain Lukaku, but for 90 minutes, I don't think he will. Defensively, as you mentioned, for us, I feel like we go into games now and I'm confident we can keep a clean sheet. I'm really confident we can keep clean sheets. And I think I haven't been able to say that for many seasons, even under, a Conte or a Sarri. There's always been that sort of idea that we might concede. Maybe that's because of the goalkeeper, I'm not sure. But I look at the game and I just think it's a perfect opportunity to get this type of fixture out of the way. 3 games into a season, international break coming up straight after that as well. I think it's a brilliant time. I'd rather play them this side of the international fixtures as opposed to after them. So I think it's a brilliant time to play them. They don't look fully fit, and yeah, I'm gonna go for. I like to do my predictions, so I'm gonna go for 2-0. I'm gonna go for 2-0 again. I can't see them scoring. As you mentioned, Mane, Salah, they don't really. Again, they don't look fully fit to me.
Mm.
Yeah, maybe Jota. In fact, no, I'll say 2-1 because I do think Jota looks on fire.
Yeah. Now that you've mentioned kind of Tuchel and how he lines up against the bigger teams, and I think he will outsmart Klopp for sure. And we saw it last season against the big teams. We kept clean sheets, whether it was Spurs away, Liverpool away, City in the Champions League final, Real Madrid at home. We keep the big clean sheets and in these type big games. And Tuchel more often than not, knows which team to field for these type of games. So I'm going to go with your first prediction before you change your mind. I think 2-0. I think it'll be very similar to the game at the Emirates. We'll have lots of chances, maybe obviously less than Arsenal because they are better defensively. I think we'll win 2-0, another Lukaku goal, and let's go over Jorginho penalty, I think.
Oh, Jorginho. Yeah. Well, in fact, we haven't mentioned who the ref is, actually. I'll leave that one to you.
Let me say 2-1, actually. 2-1 to Chelsea in that case.
Yeah. I think we've definitely... Yeah. If there's going to be a penalty, it's not going to be for Chelsea. I
completely forgot about that. Yeah. Actually, forget Jorginho having a penalty. It will be a Salah penalty. Salah and maybe an Alonso free kick. Yeah.
Yeah, but I agree with you. I do agree with you. I think, and I know I've definitely said it before, that going to Anfield, it has its moments where it's quiet. Obviously, when the game's kicking off, it's like, it's the best thing ever. But there is moments where it's quiet, but it's still an intimidating ground to go to. It's a ground that I'm sure there'll be full voice on Saturday as well. It's Chelsea. We have brilliant games. We've got that sort of rivalry, if you want to call it that, with Liverpool. Takes me back to those Champions League sort of games. Is it John Arisa? I think. That was a special game. But yeah, I think we've got the history there behind it. And if I remember correctly, I think it was Benteke who scored a couple of seasons ago. He scored a late equaliser.
He did when Hazard scored that won the goal, but that game almost was like we were fighting for ninth spot or something like that.
Yeah, it was the end of the season, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, but our game last season when Mason Mount scored was our first victory at Anfield in the Premier League since 2014. So that was our first victory in the kind of the Klopp era of Liverpool in the Premier League last season when Mount scored in the 1-0 win. So we don't have the best of records there. It was a brilliant goal, but I think Hazard scored some even better goals at Anfield in the last couple of years as well. So yeah, I think it kind of just, it's almost which players step up more in a day, I suppose, whether it be a Lukaku or a Salah, that can make a difference as well, because we know what Salah's like on his day, because he's very, very good.
Well, he scored a brilliant goal against us at Anfield.
He did with his left foot from the side. So it's kind of like you need your big players to perform on an away trip to Anfield for sure. If not, it's kind of, you forget the 3 points if they don't show up, offensively and defensively. You need all your whole team to perform. But yeah, I'll stick with 2-1 for Chelsea.
Yeah.
Despite the referee being Anthony Taylor.
I was going to wait for you to mention his name.
It's like Voldemort. I don't want to mention his name.
I'm going to ask you the question down there that penalties should be Lukaku. Do you think in the season where Jorginho has a brilliant penalty conversion rate, we should give an opportunity to Lukaku for confidence reasons? Do you think we should potentially change?
I think that's a conversation that they should have between the two of them on the training ground. I think they should decide who's going to be the penalty taker for the season. I love Jorginho's penalties and I hate Jorginho's penalties at the same time.
I'm glad you followed it up with that.
They play with your heart. Like even the one in the Super Cup final, ice in his veins, how he's just so cool, stepping up, and then he just puts it, half a meter away from the goalkeeper, but somehow the goalkeeper just, drops to his knees to the other side. But then we've seen a few of them being, got saved last season. But at the same time, he scored many more. Whereas Lukaku, I'm sure, will just be rifling them in the corner or the top of the net. So just for maybe a bit of to get the stats up as well for Lukaku, if he wants to be top goal scorer of the Prem, I wouldn't mind having him on penalty duty as well. Which could be if you want to have him. If you want to have a 20 goal season, you need to be taking penalties for your club as well, I feel.
Yeah. It's a brilliant dilemma to have.
It is. Yeah.
We didn't have that last season, so I think it's a really good question, and I'm sure we may see that. We might actually see Lukaku. I don't know if he took them for Inter Milan. I'm not sure
I
if he
feel
did
like he
one.
did because I remember watching
Yeah,
a derby, AC and
he
Inter,
did.
and I
He
think
did. Yeah.
Lukaku did score one. But even Aspi, I'd love to see Aspi on penalties. He's
Oh, I
been
don't know.
absolutely every time he's taken one, I just remember it kind of going in the roof of the net and like smashing it in the right
Maybe
corner.
Alonso.
But
I mean, I think I trust
yeah,
Alonso. I think
we've
I
we've had
trust Alonso.
we had some good takers in that shootout against
Yeah.
Villarreal, so I'm kind of a bit more confident going into shootouts at the moment than maybe a couple years ago.
Yeah. I just want to wrap up shortly. But what I do want to ask you, I don't know if you got to see Gareth Southgate's press conference
Mhm.
earlier. His reasoning for leaving Ben Chilwell out was the fact that he hasn't played any football since the Champions League final. And I can't remember if Jesse Lingard has.
That's a good point. That's a
Now,
very good point.
he may have played some preseason, I think, for Man United. And I know he came on as a sub against whoever United played at the weekend. I can't remember now. But I just think, is it a case that there's something, because he didn't use him for the Euros, I don't
No,
think either,
he
did he?
didn't
So,
start a single game at the Euros, did he?
yeah. So I'm thinking, is it a case that Alonso's obviously playing first fiddle at Chelsea? Is Chilwell's not sort of his position in Chelsea or for England, but is it kind of at risk that he might drop down the pecking order? It's kind of a weird thing not to even select him. There's 3 games to play for England. I think it's Poland, Andorra, and I can't
Oh,
remember the third team.
Hungary, I think. Yeah.
Hungary. Yeah. So there's 3 games to play in over a 7-day period. Wouldn't it be a brilliant time to potentially give him that chance to build a bit of fitness? And I'm sure Chelsea would love that as well. But do you think he's in jeopardy of maybe losing his England position as left back?
There's always that possibility in the England squad. You're never kind of assured to be called up, and we saw that with Trent's form last season. He obviously got injured right before the
Yeah.
Euros, but there was talk of him not getting called up to the England squad, and he could be similar with Chilwell. At the same time, I'm really disappointed that he's not in the England squad. But when you look at Alonso's form, it's kind of understandable why he hasn't been able to start the game yet for Chelsea, and he was amongst that batch of players that came a bit later the preseason because of his involvement until the final with England. So I think he will find a way to get back into the team for sure. Whether it be starting with Chelsea, then obviously England. He was vital in that Champions League final. We know on his day that he's an absolutely brilliant player, left back and left wing back. And as we mentioned before, why we're maybe bringing in Saul Niguez into the team is because we've got a congested fixture list. We've got lots of games. There could be a COVID outbreak. And also we sent Emerson out on loan to Lyon, which we haven't spoken about as well. So I think they'll probably play, whether it be a Champions League group stage game or a cup game, but they'll definitely, switch around between Alonso and Chilwell. And I would be very, very surprised if Chilwell's not in the England squad come the World Cup in Qatar next winter. So I think his place is, at the moment, it's probably at risk, but on the long term, it probably won't be.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's still relatively young as well. He's got a lot of years ahead of him, a lot of international tournaments ahead of him as well. And I don't think I think the way that Tuchel's going to be playing this team, this squad this season, there is going to be some rotation. And again, he did it last season. We've seen on the right side with Aspie playing right wing back at times, Callum Hudson-Odoi playing right wing back at times, Reece James there as well. I think Pulisic played either left or right, I think, at one point as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of, swapping around and rotation as well. So he'll get his opportunities. I just think that reasoning behind it was a bit sort of, he hasn't played any football.
After you mentioned the Lingard call up, I do find it a little strange, actually. Right?
Yeah. And also, I mean, I'll have to double check, but I'm assuming Harry Kane's on that.
I probably don't even, when I see Harry Kane's name, it almost just feels like it's part of the team sheet already. So I kind of choose to ignore it, but I think it must be there. I'd be very surprised if it
Harry
wasn't.
Kane's on there, who hasn't he's kicked a ball. Obviously, he's kicked a ball tonight, I think, for Spurs. But prior to the announcement of the squad, he had only played a couple of minutes against Wolves at the weekend. So it just doesn't seem like a valid reason for me. But he's the manager. He knows best. He got us to a final as well. So maybe I'm just a guy with a microphone that doesn't really know much. But two players that are in the England squad is Reece James and Mason Mount. So it's good to have a bit of Chelsea sort of influence in the England squad there as well.
Yeah, brilliant players. Southgate clearly really rates the two of them. We didn't see much of Reece James at the Euros, but we saw what he's capable of doing against Arsenal, right back or right wing back. And again, two players that I think will have a huge impact on the England squad in the coming years. And with 3 games now in the international break, I think whether it be Trippier or Walker or Reece James, I think all of them will somehow get involved and get game time. But if it means them not getting injured, I'm not too fussed really as well. So
yeah, that was going to be my other question, because obviously 7 days, 3 games. Someone's club's going to take a massive hit when it comes to injuries. I also read as well around the Premier League and clubs announcing that players who will be travelling to red listed countries, they won't be released. So I'm assuming for us that will be potentially just Thiago Silva.
Maybe I'm trying to think. Maybe Mendy or Senegal, would that be a red list? I'm not too sure.
I don't think it is. I'm
no,
not sure.
okay.
Well, it's changed today actually, so it might have actually changed again. I think there was a different list that included Thailand and other places, but I think Brazil were due to play Argentina. So I think for us at the moment, I think it's just Thiago Silva who would have been at risk anyway. So it's kind of good news for us to end the podcast done. But looking forward to obviously Liverpool. Happy with our Champions League group. I think by the time we record again, potentially we'll have Kounde, maybe Saul, Niguez as well, and maybe a surprise. We might get Cristiano Ronaldo. Who knows? You never know. Yeah. We might get someone else. So it's we don't know, do we? I think it's Tuesday that the window shuts, isn't it?
Must be. I think 31st of August.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. So yeah. Brilliant episode. And for those who, I'm going to shout out Strip Bear, who's been in the comments for the whole duration of this, who's been our cheerleader today. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us. But for anyone who's listening on Apple or Spotify, as I said at the start of this episode, you can follow us on Twitter at From the Shed End. That's all one word. And Instagram is at From the Shed End with _ between each of the words. So get following, interact with us on there as well. And don't forget YouTube. We really need those YouTube subscribers to start jumping up. So search for us on YouTube, From the Shed End, like and subscribe, drop some comments as well. Let us know what you think about what we've discussed today as well. So this has been episode 20. Seems like we've been doing them for forever, but episode 20 of From the Shed End podcast. Myself, Theo, and T. Thanks for joining us.